I worked at a video store in the 90s and had a tape returned that wasn't one of ours. I'd worked there for 2 years and I loved it. There were all kinds of deals and discounts for employees, and we had a big popcorn machine like you see in the movie theaters, free for anyone who wanted a bag. We had a large repeat customer base of regulars that always looked for recommendations which we were thrilled to give. 2 of us would close at the end of the night, with one typically being a guy. Yet somehow on that Sunday, it ended up being 2 girls. And I was tired from a bad sleep the night before and not feeling great, so I was just trying to get to the end of the shift. My co-worker Michelle's boyfriend came by about an hour before close and went through the aisles repeatedly, trying to kill time. Finally, I told her she could take off and I'd close up myself. It was a Sunday, so we'd be closing at 8 p.m., which was a half hour away, and the store had been quiet all day, so I wasn't expecting some big rush. A few minutes after they left, I decided to start the cleanup early, which meant going around and collecting the garbage bags from all the bins around the store. The store itself was huge, with dozens of 5-foot-high rows of VHS tapes and large, load-bearing pillars decorated with prop characters. There were TVs playing new releases and all kinds of movie lore. As I walked out from behind the desk to start with the garbage bins closest to the back door, I heard that familiar ding sound come from the front door opening. We had a late customer. I went back behind the desk and put another VHS in the automatic tape rewinder. Those things were great. As the tape rewound, I tried to get a better look at who had come in, but they'd turned down the first aisle. Horror. And the shelves and one of the large pillars were blocking my view. I waited for them to move out from behind a pillar, but they stayed there. Then the tape popped up from the rewinder, and I let out an embarrassing gasp. I winced at myself and replaced the tape in its plastic sleeve. I set another tape to rewind and decided to start collecting the garbages near the front. When I got up to the horror aisle, the customer was gone. The store was quiet. I walked down the aisle and turned to the right where I could see down 2 more rows, but there was no one. I went down to another row and walked out to the main aisle leading to the desk, and came face to face with the customer. He was a man in his mid-20s, about 6 feet tall. He had long jet black hair and was dressed in all black. He had a dirty leather jacket and wore chains with pentagrams and goat skulls. The Satanist look wasn't intimidating back then, as it kind of blended with the punk crowd in our area. I couldn't tell which side the guy was on, but there was something behind his eyes that made me feel cold. He stared at me, long and hard. It was the most uncomfortable I'd ever been. Neither of us spoke for a moment. I thought he was going to rush me. Then the tape rewinder popped up and killed the tension. I let out a nervous laugh and he smiled at me like he'd known me my whole life. Then he said goodnight and walked past me. I croaked out a "you too" as I heard the front door open and close with a familiar jingle. I turned and saw the man outside, walking off toward a car at the far end of the parking lot. It was 7:45, but I decided to shut the store down early. The man left a lasting impression and I called my boyfriend to be here right at 8 to pick me up. I locked the front door and felt better. I packed up all the garbage and put them away. Then I went back to the front desk to empty the till, when I saw something on the counter. It was a VHS tape in a plastic container. The man must have returned it, only it wasn't one of ours. It had the same kind of clear plastic holder we used, but didn't have a sleeve or jacket from our store. The tape inside of it had a sticker on it with a name written on it. Melissa. My name. The tape wasn't rewound. It was as far to the right as it could get, like it'd been watched to the very end. My hands were shaking, but I managed to put the tape in the rewinder. It was an automatic reaction. I wasn't even sure I wanted to watch the tape. As it rewound, I argued with myself over what to do. I thought about not watching it, but knew that would eat away at me. I thought about waiting for my boyfriend and watching it with him, but he was a hothead, and if there was something bad in that tape, I could see him going postal. I decided to watch it by myself in the back office of the store. My finger hovered over the play button, but eventually pressed it. The tape started with static, then an image took over. It was a grainy handheld camera, held by someone in the driver's seat of a car that was in movement. The holder of the camera was trying to keep it steady while they drove. After several seconds, the available hand turned the steering wheel and I caught a glimpse of something out of the windshield that I recognized. It was a glowing sign above our store, South Coast Video in neon. I watched the car pull into the back end of the parking lot, right where the man had been going earlier. The camera pointed at the front entrance of the video store and waited. A familiar car entered the parking lot, my boyfriend's. It pulled up in front of the store and I watched myself kiss my boyfriend and go in. The video cut the footage from a new day and another work drop-off, this time by my parents. It showed another and another, over a dozen cuts of me getting out of cars and going into the store. Then the video showed me coming out, going into whichever car was picking me up that night, and driving off. In the video, I recognized the pants I was wearing from the previous day and realized I was watching footage from last night. I watched myself get into my parents' car and we drove off. And this time, the camera followed. The driver was trailing us, and it stuck with us all the way home, watching my parents' car pull into our driveway. The camera focused on our house number, 42, then cut to black. For a moment I thought that was it, but the tape had more. A new image flickered on. It said it was just after 3 a.m. It was from inside the car again, and it was pointed at my house. The driver's side door opened and the camera got out. It moved across the street and towards the side of my house. The camera pointed in through windows along the side as it moved towards the backyard. I saw the living and dining room. Both were dark and empty. At the back door, there was fumbling and jangling before a small metal tool was brought out and jammed into the lock. It was twisted and popped the door open. My heart went from beating 1,000,000 times per second to not at all. The man was inside my house. The camera switched to grainy night vision and moved through the empty kitchen. It entered the living room and looked at photos hanging on the walls and books stacked on shelves. It took the whole room in. Then it turned to the staircase, the one leading up to the bedrooms. The camera moved up the stairs quietly and reached the second floor. I pressed stop on the VCR. I wasn't sure I wanted to continue. I reconsidered getting my boyfriend and asking him to watch it and tell me what happened. But I had to know. I pressed play. The tape began with the camera looking left and right down the hallway. I knew that to the right were my younger brother and sister's room, and to the left was the bathroom, my parents' room, and mine at the far end. The camera started left, focusing on the door at the end of the hallway. My door. The camera moved past the bathroom and my parents' room without slowing. It came to a stop at my door. A hand reached out and turned the knob. It opened a crack and the hand slid it open further, bringing the camera in. My bedroom door closed with the man now inside. The camera found my bed and there I was, sound asleep. My thumb hovered over the stop button on the VCR, ready to end whatever I was about to see before it traumatized me for life. The camera was placed on my desk facing the bed. The man from the store came into view. He carried a rag in his hand. I watched him creep up onto the bed, easing himself across it until he was over top of me, and then he pressed the rag down over my face. My body trembled and shook, then went still. I pressed stop and threw up in the garbage bin beside the TV. Watching the attack, I'd gotten a horrible, familiar feeling, like a forgotten memory reappearing after being lost. I took a few minutes to collect myself before deciding, once again, that whatever happened to me on that tape, I needed to know for myself. I pressed play again, and there was the image of my unconscious body in bed, being straddled by a black cloth gauze psychopath. The man pulled the rag away from my face. He pulled my shirt over my head, then reached around to the back of his pants. He pulled out a knife with a ceremonial handle and dragged it down the center of my chest without drawing blood. Then he put the blade to the palm of his hand and cut it. He winced at the pain, but then resheathed his knife and dabbed his right fingers in the blood from his palm. The man used the blood to draw all over my stomach and chest. He made strange markings on my skin, taking his time while he did. Then the man finished and lit a candle. He held it with his right hand and put his bloody left hand on my stomach. I could hear him on the tape speaking quietly, but couldn't make out what the man was saying. It sounded like hushed chanting and prayer. As he went on, my back began to arch upwards and lift off the bed. My mouth opened and I held one long, continuous gasp for what felt like minutes. Then the man stopped, and so did my gasp. I fell limply back to the bed and the candle blew out. After a moment, the man got up and cleaned the blood from my stomach using a towel he'd brought. He grabbed the camera from my desk and crept out of my room. Everything went hazy after that. I'd sweat through all my clothes and my whole body was trembling, but I still watched the camera sneak back out of my house into his car. The video pulled something back into my memory. A strange, frightening disturbance in the night, only brief flashes in length and dismissed as a bad dream. But I had a horrible migraine when I woke up. It all made sense. I showed the video to my boyfriend and he freaked out. We called the police and gave them every bit of evidence there was, but the man was never found. That was years ago, and the only reason I'm thinking about it now is because I'm pregnant. And there are strange markings appearing on my growing belly that look like the ones the man had drawn in his own blood.